you very much. I'm Mike Pence. I'm from Indiana, and I am running for President of the United States of America. Thank you all for coming. I don't think I am old enough to be Joe Mitchell's grandfather. Joe, I want to thank you for your example and leading a whole new generation of young Republicans around America. I know you're making Dare County proud. You're making Iowa proud in your national leadership role. Give him another round of applause. And I want to thank Bubba Sorensen, who is a principled conservative. I'm incredibly proud of Governor Kim Reynolds and this great Republican majority that is delivering on tax relief, educational opportunities. Bubba, thank you for fighting for the people of Iowa. Here, I got that. I'm a new grandfather, so I'm ready. Now Joe's grandfather. I'm a new grandfather. Also, I want to say thanks to Gabe and Kelly. What a spectacular place. Thank you for making us feel so welcome, and thank you for making such an incredible investment here in Adair County. We just admire your family so much. You can applaud them if you want, Bubba. Finally, I always wait to introduce the highest ranking official in the room last. She was 30 years an elementary school teacher. She is an accomplished artist. When I met her, she had a pilot's license, a motorcycle. It was love at first sight. She would go on to be a mother of three and a Marine Corps mom with a son in the United States Marine Corps. She was the First Lady of Indiana, and I would say without hesitation, she's the best second lady the United States of America has ever had. Would you welcome Karen Pence? Thank you all for being here. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Let me just share a few thoughts. And then what I love about Iowa is because you all know your minds. And I want to talk about what you're interested in and what your focus is in the time that we have remaining. I am headed to the football game. I'm headed to the Atlantic Perry football game tonight. I'll be flipping the coin at the beginning. And then they invited me up to the broadcast booth to, call some of the game on the radio. Which really does not sound like a very good idea to me. But I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, and we're looking forward to being out there. First, we'll listen to, let's put a fine point on it. I'm running for President of the United States because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I think Joe Biden has weakened America at home and abroad in the last 2.5 years. And I think now is the time when all of us who have the ability to bring America back have a responsibility to step up for the American people, and that's why I'm running for President of the United States. I stand before you today. I know many of you know me as a Vice President, and I'm proud of the record of our administration. In 4 short years, we rebuilt our military. We revived our economy through tax cuts, less regulations on businesses in the city and on the farm. We unleashed American energy. And I'm probably most proud of the fact that we appointed 3 conservatives to the Supreme Court of the United States that gave the American people a new beginning for the right to life. But before that, I was governor of the state of Indiana. I like to remind people in Iowa that I come from a state that starts in I and ends in A too. I know a little bit about states like Iowa. Honestly, every time we spend time in Iowa, we feel like we can close our eyes and open them and we'd already be home. I grew up in a community not too different than this. Bartholomew County and Adair County are about the same. A strong tradition of family and faith, commitment to freedom, agriculture. I tell you, I'm a small town guy, if you know me. In fact, I represented that small town I grew up in Congress for 12 years. I was a House conservative leader before it was cool. Actually fought against the big spenders in our own party. I fought against a Republican president in my own party, oftentimes on the fault lines of big spending. Before all of that, I met this girl. I married her 38 years ago. We raised 3 great kids. I mentioned one's a Marine. One of my unworthy son-in-laws is a lieutenant in the United States Navy. Our son and son-in-law are both fighter pilots. Our daughter's a best-selling writer. Our other daughter's a working prosecutor. We're incredibly blessed. I'll tell you what, to be honest with you, from the time that we left Washington, D.C. 2.5 years ago and moved back to Indiana, got 5 acres and a pond, got a John Deere riding mower, right? Got 3 granddaughters. Our life was pretty good. But when I looked at what Joe Biden has done, open border policies at the southern border that have unleashed the worst border crisis in American history, a gusher of spending that launched the worst inflation in 40 years. Mortgage rates today are up at a 25-year high. Their war on energy causing gasoline prices to shoot through the roof. And of course, that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that's emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world and now has war raging in Eastern Europe and China continuing immense. I must tell you that our life was pretty good back in Indiana after we moved home, after that season of service. But I was raised to believe that to whom much is given, much will be required. When I looked at all the challenges facing our country, I want to say to the people here in Adair County, Karen and I simply stepped forward because I truly do believe that by virtue of having been your vice president in 4 consequential years, having been a governor of a successful conservative state, having been a leader in the Congress for 12 years, that I am simply the most qualified, the most tested, and the most proven conservative leader. And that's why I'm asking for your support, because it's those conservative values that are going to bring America all the way back. But this is no time for on-the-job training. I'll say to you very plainly, we don't need a president who's too old, and we don't need a president who's too young. You know, I say with great appreciation for the opportunity I had to serve alongside with him. Donald Trump had his time. Joe Biden doesn't know what time it is. The challenges that we're facing in this country, I think they require experience. And I want to promise all of you, as you go about this business in Iowa, and I want to hear what's on your mind, as you go about this business in Iowa, sorting out and shaping our national leadership, I want you to know that the decision you're going to make in about 100 days may be more consequential even than it usually is. I mean, Iowa's always played an outsized role in shaping our national leadership, but for someone who believes that we need new leadership in the White House and we need new leadership in the Republican Party, I believe that Iowa has the opportunity to start that conversation almost as never before. And so I just offer my candidacy to you. And I offer our values to you. I hope, you know, one of the things I've realized since we left the White House was I'm well known, but I'm not known well. Right? Most people know me as that vice president standing a couple steps behind the president. Stood beside him loyally every single day until my oath to the Constitution required me to do elsewhere on a very fateful day. But I'm proud of the record of that administration. But I understand how people see me in that role. But I want to tell you, I hope before the evening is out, you see me in a little bit deeper dimension. You see me as a husband, a father, someone that's been in the conservative movement for a long time. And lastly, I hope you know what animates my life, and I know it means a great deal to communities like this one. I know it means a great deal to Joe and his family. But for us, everything begins with faith. You know, when I was a freshman in college, I'd walked away from the faith of my youth. I'd lost interest in religion, thought I could pretty much do life on my own. But I got invited down to a Christian music festival at a place called Asbury University in Wilmore, Kentucky. A place that was much in the news recently. It was 1978. I was sitting on a hillside, listening to music, listening to preaching. It was like I heard the words for the first time. That God so loved the world that He sent His only begotten Son, that whoever might believe in Him might not perish, but have everlasting life. And I remember on that rainy night, on a Saturday night, when an invitation was given, I stood up and I walked down that hill and I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. My life has never been the same. Our marriage has been grounded on our common faith. We've tried to build a family, we've tried to build a career that first and foremost honors our faith. So the last thing I'd say to all of you is you give us a look. I hope you might remember us in your prayers. If you're inclined to bow the head and bend the knee, I encourage you to do that too. And not just for us and for our family, but for all the men and women vying for your support, and frankly for all the people in this country, because I truly believe those ancient words that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray and turn, he'll hear from heaven, he'll heal this land. This one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, and we will bring America back together. Thank you all very much. God bless. I love it if you slip your hand in the air and give me your first name, and please call me Mike, by the way. Go.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Welch.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hey, good to meet you. So as a parent who left the workforce because I didn't have access to childcare, this was a question of debate a couple weeks ago. What will you do to help families so 51% of families struggle to find childcare, live in childcare deserts. What will you do as president to help families be able to work?
Well, first, look, we passed the largest tax cuts and tax reform in American history. I worked tirelessly on Capitol Hill to get the votes to get that done. And it took a lot of work. I mean, frankly, working with Congress is like, it isn't like herding cats. It's like herding kittens. But we got it done. We got that done. But I think we got work to do. Look, Joe Biden has wrecked this economy with his gusher of spending, record inflation, war on energy, his stifling avalanche of regulations on this economy. But I think it all begins with family. That's why I love your question. So one of the things that we did, and part of the plan that we laid out for the American family was, if I'm president of the United States, we are going to reform the tax code in such a way that families with children at home can live on one income once again. We're going to do it. Okay? I mean, the truth is that it was only about 25 years ago that most Americans could earn, in about 3/4 of the year, they could earn enough to pay for all the expenses for the family for the year. Now it takes all 12 months. And that's even if you got the income to be able to do that. So I think we ought to be using the tax code in such a way that really puts a premium on families raising children. I really believe the family is the centerpiece of America's strength. Strong families make strong communities make a strong nation. I just finished a book with my daughter. It's coming out in a month. And Mrs. Pence just wrote a wonderful book that came out this last week about her life and her career. But the book I just wrote is entitled Go Home for Dinner.
Yeah.
Because I really do believe that to bring America back, we've got to bring the American family back. And so I promise you, it's not just about child care, it's about you having the ability to be able to live on one income, to prosper, to be able to thrive. And I'm going to fight for the American family to do just that. Okay?
Thank you.
Great. Tiffany, please.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're aware, our state, we're heavily, a big part of our economy is ethanol and everything. I'm sure you're aware Senator Grassley is sponsoring the Next Generation Fuels Act for blend expansion. And my question is, as president, will you work with Senator Grassley to get that legislation through into law? Thank you.
I love Chuck Grassley. I was for Chuck Grassley before it was cool. I remember back when I used to have a radio show, and I used to be watching C-SPAN when I wasn't on the air, and I saw Congressman Chuck Grassley. He was one of the original firebrand conservatives in Congress. And I don't know how old he is, but he has never
89.
He has never slowed down. I got to tell you. To answer your question plainly, I was for ethanol before it was cool as well. Like I said, I come from Indiana. I just was with some cattlemen at another stop earlier. A lot of people think that renewables have played a role in just helping income on the farms. No, the cattlemen told me that one of the reasons why you've got a booming cattleman industry in western Iowa is because of ethanol and the byproducts from ethanol. So you better believe it. My lodestar on those issues is going to be two people, Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst. And I promise you we'll work very closely with them to make sure that we're hitting those marks and we're continuing to see that renewables grow. But I am an all of the above energy guy, right? I'm going to end the war on energy in this country and make sure we have the infrastructure to be able to move it around. And Joe Biden ran on a promise to end fossil fuels. And he's been working to do it every day since, to the great detriment of the American people. So buckle up. We'll be there. You'll have a champion for the industry, I promise you. Can I tell you one Chuck Grassley story? So Chuck was in the Oval Office one time, and he was leaning forward, his one elbow on the Resolute desk, and he was talking to the president like this. He was talking, you imagine talking about ethanol. And he was raising his voice a little bit. He was making his point really like this, really loud, and he finally stopped and he said, Mr. President, I'm not yelling, that's just the way I talk. It was true. So, I love it. I love them. That's where we'll look. Yes, ma'am.
So I work for Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation, and I've worked with those with disabilities my whole life.
Thank you.
But more and more and more, the state keeps cutting Medicaid dollars or funding dollars for any of those programs. Yet we're supposed to be an employment first state, and we're supposed to be inclusive and diversified. And I keep hearing companies tell me, we want to be diversified, we want to be inclusive, but then they won't hire anybody with a disability that is visual. Now, if it's a hidden disability, we can usually get them in pretty easy, but if it's a visual disability, we really struggle. And there was a law that took effect, I think, in March 20 or 21, that stated that there could be no more sub-minimum wage. So, for unemployment or for employment for people with disabilities. And yet, I found out yesterday or today that we still have several agencies in our state employing people for pennies on the dollar. So what can you do as president to ensure that people with disabilities have the same equal rights that everybody else has, and that they're included and allowed to work and get paid a living wage?
Well, number one, thanks for your heart for some of the more vulnerable people in our communities. Give her a round of applause for a lot of people. Good for you. Look, the Americans with Disabilities Act is part of the law of the land. The President takes an oath to see that the laws are faithfully executed. I promise you we'll do that. And we'll look for ways to encourage employment of people with disabilities. Some of the more formative experiences in my young life was working with young people that had muscular dystrophy back in Columbus, Indiana. And the rich blessing of engaging. I was in New Hampshire not long ago, and there was a coffee shop that had literally been established around working with people with disabilities. Local Christian couple set it up and doing incredible work. I think you celebrate those things. I think you want to encourage that, but you also you want to make sure that the laws concerning Americans with disabilities are all properly enforced. Access is made available. I promise you I will. But I love your heart. I really do.
Thank you.
Yes, in the way back.
I'm Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
I have a lot of questions, but my question at this time for you, Mr. Vice President, is where do you stand on the funding for Ukraine?
Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate it very much because it's an important debate within our party and within the country today. But first, let me tell you, I don't think that Russia's invasion of Ukraine would have ever happened apart from that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. It really begins there in my mind. Because when Joe Biden, did this cut and run, airplanes with people hanging off the bottom of them, lose 13 service members at the Kabul airport, it couldn't have been handled more poorly. And I believe it's emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world. Now, Russia's responsible for their decision to invade Ukraine. They need to be held responsible and held accountable, especially for the war crimes and the brutality of that invasion that goes on to this day. But I think first you want to say that and understand that. So that's the bookend on the front end. The bookend on the back end is China. Make no mistake about it that whatever happens, do I need to get that? Whatever happens in Ukraine is going to bear upon whether or not we see China exercise its military ambitions in the Asia Pacific. China's watching. They're watching whether the United States and the West are going to falter in our role as leader of the free world. And but now, specifically in Ukraine, I believe in what's called the Reagan Doctrine. Ronald Reagan in 1985, in the State of the Union address, said, here's the deal. If you're willing to fight the communists in your country with your soldiers, we'll give you the means to fight them there so we don't have to fight them. It's part of what brought down the Soviet Union. It really is. And it's in that spirit that I think we need to continue. I think we need to continue to provide military support to the Ukrainian military. I mean, think about it at this point in time. It's been 18 months. For 5% of our defense budget, Russia's gone from the second most powerful military in the world to the second most powerful military in Ukraine. That's what we used to call progress. But here's my main issue, my bottom line. Why do you support it, Mike? Because I know some Republicans believe that we have to choose between solving problems here at home and being leader of the free world, standing firm. I don't believe that. I think anybody that tells you we can't secure our border, revive our economy, bring law and order to our major cities, stop the flow of fentanyl, solve the problems at home, and also be leader of the free world, has got a pretty small view of the greatest nation on earth. We can do both. We just need the right leadership in the White House to do it. But here's my main concern. I've met Vladimir Putin. I've stood closer to him than I'm standing to Joe Mitchell right now. I have no doubt in my mind if Vladimir Putin overruns Ukraine, it's not going to be too long before he crosses the border of a NATO country where our men and women in uniform are going to have to go fight. So my view is help the Ukrainians stop him there so we don't have to fight him if he crosses another border. Secondly, like I said about China, I think by giving them the means to repel that Russian invasion, you're going to do more to keep China in check than anything else that we can do. So to me, it's really all about whether we're going to continue to be the leader of the free world, whether we're going to recognize that America is the arsenal of democracy. And for my part, Ukraine is not our war, but freedom is our fight. And if I'm President of the United States, I'll explain to the American people what our stakes are way better than Joe Biden has done. I think he's done a terrible job explaining why we're supporting the Ukrainian military. And secondly, we'll provide the kind of means that they need, not just to not lose, but to win against the Russians. And America and the world will be more secure and more peaceful as a result.
Thank you.
I believe it. Thank you for the question. Very good. Kevin.
I want to follow up a little bit on that. The world's a really dangerous place right now. You were talking about China and Russia. Ukraine's a great example of this. The war we fight tomorrow is not going to be the war we've been fighting for the last 50 years. It's going to be based on IT. We're already seeing that over in Ukraine, with drones and all sorts of things like that. For the last several years, China's been buying up all the rare earth materials around the world. They've been planning for that.
Right.
Our countries and our IT is pretty much private enterprise, and they've kept us world leaders in that. What would you do with your administration to make sure we maintain that?
Yeah, China is the greatest strategic and economic threat the United States faces in the 21st century. Full stop. Full stop. I led our administration's efforts in 2018 to articulate a new policy toward China. You can look at that. Gave the first major address outlining that we were no longer going to put up with their trade abuses, their intellectual property theft, their military provocations in the Asia Pacific, let alone look the other way when they're persecuting Christian pastors and Muslim Uyghurs and trampling on the rights of people in Hong Kong when they broke that deal with the United Kingdom. But you put your finger on a very sophisticated point, too, and that is that we have got to make the kind of investments in this country, whether it be microchips or otherwise, to make sure that we have the technology to be able to not just run even, we need to remain dominant over China. We have the strongest military in the world today, but China is working every day to catch up and surpass us. Okay? And this is at a time that Joe Biden has been working overtime to try and cut military spending. We even have some conservative voices in our party that are saying there's no appetite for increasing military spending. I'm somebody that thinks we've got to put our fiscal house in order. We do. But I'm calling for an increase in our defense spending that would build us up to a 355 ship Navy, that would build up our strategic forces, that would make sure that America stays dominant and in the lead, because peace comes through strength. You know, people a lot of times debate, well, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? The best military strategy is to be so strong nobody tests you, right? And the truth is, we're that strong today, but we've got work to do to stay on the lead lap. We do. And that's the reason why, whether it be IP, whether it be technology, whether it be dealing with some of these resource issues, we just got to lean all the way into it. And that's why I've said that we ought to spend a minimum of a certain percentage of our GDP on military spending, and we ought to build up our forces in such a way. We don't have a military fitted to the new challenges of the 21st century. Okay? And we've got to build it out. And of course, but I promise you, if I'm President of the United States, if I'm Commander-in-Chief, I'm going to treat the men and women of our armed forces as if they were our own family. Because in our case, they are. Okay? I'm going to make sure our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, and Guardians have the resources they need for them and their families, their equipment, and their training to accomplish their mission and come home safe. Now, yes, please. Hi.
Hi, I'm Deanna.
Hi, Deanna.
What would you do to counter that? I believe the liberals think you can spend your way into prosperity. And I want to know how we go about getting the things we need, but yet cutting the debt for our kids and our grandkids.
Deanna, thank you. What are we going to do about the debt? She said. I'm one of the few people that's been willing to talk about this. Okay? Look, we have a couple things we can do. Number one, you can turn off about $3 trillion in unspent funds that Biden's just been appropriating left and right. You can do that. You can turn off about another $1 trillion. That's new money, though. We got a national debt the size of our nation's economy today. So the first thing I would do is I would come back to Adair County, and I would speak to all the American people about the fact that if you think we got a big national debt today, leave it alone and wait 20 years. It'll increase by 5 times. I'm using numbers from the Congressional Budget Office based on the income we know is going to come in and what the obligations are going to be. I mean, if you think inflation is bad with a $33 trillion national debt, try $150 trillion. Okay? So what do you do about it? Well, I think what you do is you just come clean with the American people that 75% of our federal budget is entitlement programs. Okay? Social Security and Medicare. Everybody says politicians can't talk about that, and I get it. Because the Democrats immediately will demagogue it, and Grandma will be in a wheelchair going over a cliff. I got it. I've seen all. I think the American people are getting wise to this. They're seeing the cost of eggs go up 50% in the last 2 years. They're seeing the cost of living shoot through the roof. They're seeing it harder and harder to raise a family on a pretty decent income, and they say, wait a minute, we got to do something. Here's my plan. Number one, you say everybody's got hair the same color as me, no change. Okay? All right, great, good. I mean, if you're in retirement now, and I cannot confirm or deny whether Karen Pence qualifies for Social Security. One of us looks like we do, the other one doesn't, if that's a hint.
But I could not be Joe's grandmother.
Thank you for that clarification. Here's the deal. Number one, you're in retirement today. We're going to fund these programs, but it's not going to affect you. Okay? You can listen. We'd love your support, but it's not going to touch you. And then I'm going to say to people, if you're over the age of 40, it has no bearing on you either. I don't believe in changing horses in the middle of the stream. And you've been working your life. I don't want to know how old you are. You look like you're maybe 41. So, huh?
Close enough.
Okay, close enough.
43.
43 years old, great. So I want to say to you, you've been working hard all your life. You've been paying into Social Security. I don't want to change the deal. You've been paying into it halfway. We'll keep you in the same deal. If you're under the age of 40, I'd like to have a conversation. I'd like to say to these young people, and I think they're ready for it, because this is a with it generation. These people got the whole world on their phone, right? You say to them, here's the deal. We're going to preserve these programs for the future by reforming them. And I need you to work with me. And here's what we're going to do. I would go to the American people, and then I'd go to Congress, Ian. I'd go to the American people, and I'd say, younger Americans, here's the deal I'd like to do. Number one, in exchange for some modest changes in these programs that you'd never even noticed by the time you got there. Right? I mean, whether it's age of retirement, maybe you phase in like Ronald Reagan did, you raise the age a little bit. Maybe there's income levels where you just say, look, if you're extremely wealthy, maybe you get less, the kind of things that you would never even notice. Here's my deal. You agree to do that, I'll let you take that New Deal program that is Social Security, and I'll give you a better deal. Here's the better deal. I'll let you take a portion of your payroll taxes, Joe and Bubba, and let you put it into a personal savings account. And if it generates 2% return over the course of the lifetime, that'll be basically twice what Social Security will pay out on the same amount of money. And it'll be your account. You won't be waiting on a politician whether they're going to keep your promise. You're going to have it in your own account. Right? Now, somebody said to me the other day, but that'd be awful hard to set up. That'd be very complicated to do, is to let people choose between 3 different mutual funds of American companies. And then I love to smile and say, you don't have to set it up. It already exists. It's called the Thrift Savings Plan. 10 million federal employees are in it. You get to choose. Ask your senators about it sometime. We're in it, our family. Took a portion of our payroll tax and put it into one of 3 mutual funds. You just change it into a retirement element for people. And say you can't touch it until you come to retirement. But it would grow our economy, and it would give us a chance to reform these programs. Because that's what that's what we have to do. We've got to reform these programs in ways that will save us from that mountain range of debt. But you can do it, but it'll take leadership to do it. It'll take somebody that knows how to work with Congress. I do. I've been there, done that. Somebody who knows how to move an administration, but hopefully also somebody who knows how to talk to the American people. Anyway, does that make any sense?
Yes, I have one more question.
Okay.
More important.
Last one, because then I got to go to the football game.
Do you feel that God has personally called you to run for president?
You know, that's a wonderful question. Do I feel like we're called to run for president?
Yeah.
I would tell you without hesitation, yes. And as we prayed about this, we felt a great sense of duty. And not that the outcome is certain, right? But I have to tell you, when I looked at everything that's happened in this country, Karen and I took the matter to prayer. I think of that verse, I was just reading it on the way here, Esther 4:14. Who knows but for such a time as this, you've been brought to this position. You know, there's my old running mate does pretty well in the polls, I understand. There's a new poll out there that shows us doing a little bit better. But we didn't run because we felt like we saw some clear 8-lane superhighway straight to the Oval Office. And I'm not running because I want to know what it's like to work at the White House. I'm running because I just believe in my heart of hearts that when I looked at the extraordinary privileges we've had to serve, I would know what to do and who to do it with on day one to turn this country around. And when we looked on that and prayed on that, we felt called to step forward. And I'll tell you what, there's been joy in our journey the last 6 months. I tell you, we don't know what the future holds, but we do know who holds the future.
Amen.
And I just have to tell you, the people of Iowa, it has been an unbroken blessing to be traveling among the people of this state, because you people of Iowa are the greatest people on earth. And I want to thank you for the warm reception people of the state have given us. I want to wish you well as you go about your business of deciding on the standard bearer. We ask for your support and your prayers, but mostly just tonight. Thank you for coming out. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and God bless you all.